Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Hello, Gabriel. Beautiful, sunny San Diego. Awesome. Hello, Claudia. Good to see you on today. Hello, Rose. Hello, Evia. Hello, Linda. Hello, Nancy. Okay, so what we're going to do today, hello, everybody. What we're going to do today is we're going to continue on the color chart. We're winding up the last part, and that is going to be the luminescent colors. And so the luminescent colors are made up, there are 4 categories of luminescence. There's iridescent, there's pearlescent, there's duochrome, and there's interference. And I'll show you the properties of each one of those and kind of what makes them interesting. There are several artists that use these to a high degree. Sandy Allneck, which I've posted on Facebook here. You can look at her site and see how she uses them, because I always ask that question, well, how do you use them? Sometimes they're used to have this I'm trying to not poke myself in the eye as I do this. You can see the light in people's eyes. Sometimes when you use watercolor, you don't have that light, because when it dries out, you don't see that reflection back. And artists will use the luminescent colors to do that. Another artist who's on right now is Claudia Diaz Hernandez, who does a phenomenal job in using the luminescent colors. You might want to go to her site and listen to her as a brand ambassador, what she talks about insofar as these colors are concerned. Within the luminescence, there's 48 different colors. And in the 48, there's 19 duochrome, and I'll go over what that means. There's 7 interference. There's 2 pearlescent shimmer, and there's 20 iridescent, making up a family of 48. So now I'm going to raise this up, because the sheets of paper we're going to be using are quite large. I'm going to flip this down. Okay, so here's what we're talking about. The Daniel Smith luminescent colors. The Daniel Smith luminescent colors. And we're going to go over the iridescent. So we're going to go over these right here today. And then we'll do the remainder next week. So let's talk a little bit about these. So as watercolorists, you're painters of light. And so for the luminescent colors, essentially what's happening, if we look at the iridescent, IRR, iridescent, what happens is this is the particle. So we have particles which make up pigment, which make up and are used for us to make watercolors and oils. Okay. So particles, we incorporate those particles into our chemistry. So the particles are made into pigment. The pigment is then used by us at this step and our chemistry to make watercolors and oils. So this right here is a particle. And what happens for the iridescent, the light wave comes in, it encounters either that mica, M-I-C-A, mica, or a silica, and it hits it, and it's going to reflect back. So iridescents are all about reflection, coming in, bouncing, and coming back out. Then we have the next group, which are called the interference colors. Interference. And interference, when that light wave comes in and encounters that piece of mica or silica, it scatters or refracts. And it doesn't have this clean in and out. It comes in and it goes all different ways. So that's refraction. And we're going to see iridescent. You can see over the white paper and you'll see over the dark, in the case I'm using black. The interference, it's going to be very difficult to see over the white, and that's because of how the light is scattered. Okay, and the last one is going to be the duochrome. Well, the duochrome actually has two things going on. It's composed of both iridescent and interference, so it both reflects and it refracts. It does both. It refracts and it reflects. So when that light wave comes down and hits a particle, it might reflect. It can come down and hit a different particle at a different depth, and that one could actually refract. So these are really super high forms of chemistry, how they're made. Some of these are 25 layers. Make believe it's a sandwich. It's 25-layer sandwich. Really super complex pigments. All synthetic, made for the car industry for the most part, or anybody that wants to use a paint that sparkles. Okay, it's not glitter. It's mica and or silica. Gabriel, you are a painter of light because you're manipulating light whenever you want to paint, because you're dealing with reflection and refraction, which are both how these light waves are manipulated. Okay, so with that, when you have this for the duochrome, when you have this reflection and refraction, it's called flop. It's called a flopping color, or flop, F-L-O-P. All right, that is the science behind it. It goes into huge chemistry behind that. I would see probably from 43 viewers go down to about 5. So we're not going to do that. Not everybody's interested in the chemistry. I know some of you are. So yesterday, this is what we did yesterday. In a second, I'm going to have to start painting stuff out. I'm going to run out of time. I'll do it over both white. This is 140-pound cold-pressed Lana Aquarelle. On one half, it's Mars black ground. Mars black is the same as lunar black, but this is Mars black ground, watercolor ground, and this part is just the paper, the sizing on the paper. Okay, and so right away you can look and say, wow, I can see it over white. That's most likely a iridescent. You'd be right. And this is another one we did, just because now you're seeing them dry, and when you see them wet, it takes a little while, several minutes, before you see them really start to pop, because that water has to go away, which then leaves the pigment up on top. So there you go. Really quite stunning. You're going to see this today. We're going to do each one. So I'm going to put that to the side. I'll show you another one real quick, and then we'll go and we'll start doing it ourselves. You know, chemistry, art, math, they all go together. I just, you know, what I want to do, what I try to do, is definitely not make it scary. It should not be scary for anybody. It should always be a choice. You know, how much time do you want to spend doing that or not doing it, but not because it's scary. It takes a tool out of your tool chest when you don't have it. So I want to at least present it to you. Okay, so here's the last one. And then we'll start doing this ourselves here. What I thought I would do, I didn't do this yesterday, but I thought I would do it today, is as we have a couple colors, because people say, well, it should only be on black. I'm just going to get a brush here and there and paint it across the top of these. We did these about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And I'm going to put a random line, and then I'll let it dry, and then I'll show you what it looks like on top of other colors. So it doesn't only have to be black. And the only reason I have these, they're down here on my floor from the last sessions that we did. Okay? All right, so with that, we're going to start. Put this away. Put that away. and then I'll turn it sideways so you can see all of it. Well, thank you, Gabriel. I don't think if you want to show somebody, you should ever have them be scared of what you're showing them. Always giving them the choice of how much they want to know about it, but never try to scare anybody. Okay, these are in no particular order, but they're going to be all of the iridescents. So in no particular order, but all of the iridescents. So we'll start off with iridescent copper. So if you want ideas, again, Sandy Allneck, hers is posted on Facebook. And then brand ambassador, you can go and see Claudia Diaz Hernandez. They both show how they've used the iridescent. It might just give you ideas. I've seen them in seashells, insect wings, butterflies, hummingbirds, anything that has in life that has that iridescence. It doesn't have to be life too. It could be, you know, and we're going to start seeing this come alive here as it starts to dry. Oh, it's my pleasure, Michael. Thank you. And please, Michael's a brand ambassador too. If you're on and you use the iridescents, please let the viewers know. Just say I use them. Come to my site. That way they can see. I don't want to leave any of you out. Okay, this is going to be iridescent sapphire. So one of the interesting things about the iridescents is you can actually see them over the white. Where they're really going to pop is when you put them over a dark. But you might not want them to pop. You might want just a certain area to come alive. So there are all different ways of being able to use them. And if you leave this too long on your palette, or if it's a dot card, you're going to want to put a little bit of water to wake them up, because the mica acts almost like a kind of like a shingle on your house, and they can get tight. So if you give them 15 seconds or 20 seconds, it'll wake them up. That's what Lauren always tells me, is you can wake up a paint. Because as a watercolors, really you're really painting with the pigment. It's not, while it's in a gum arabic binder, it's different than acrylic, which is in a polymer, or oil, which is in a linseed. You're really seeing it when it comes to on the top of your paper. About 50% is inside to give it hold, but you have a great deal up on top. You're really going to start seeing this pop here as soon as we get it to dry. So Mel, I would ask Claudia that, or Sandy, or but I can tell you, this is what happens with your water. At the end of the day, probably about 5 hours from now, this is going to be clear. It's actually going to be clear, and there'll just be pigment on the bottom. But these are like love. I mean, if you are painting with Cascade Green or Ultramarine, and you happen to dip your brush in here, you're going to pick up that pigment. Now, it's not going to be mammoth's amount of it, right? You can hardly see it. But if it's on a ultramarine or some other color, you will see it, a color that doesn't normally have a glitter to it, you're going to see that sparkle. And so if you don't want that, you just want to make sure you're using fresh water for one set of paints and another water for your iridescence or luminescence. But they will work with any paint. What they're going to impart, they're going to impart that sparkle. You would see it more if it was a transparent, for example, than you would if it's an opaque, but you're going to see it. And I think that's one thing I've always admired about artists is the creative part. What happens if? I really like that. I like that in business, and I like that in your art, or just as a mindset. What happens if? Just trying things that are new. This right here is antique silver. And so you're seeing these. Let me get the antique silver done, and I'll present this to you sideways. So Gabriel, to do that, what do you use to get that sparkle? Use iridescent or luminescent of some type, or one of the paints that has a natural. For example, some of the Permatex are going to have that naturally. Lapis, to an extent, will have it. Kyanite will have it because of its crystal structure. Just curious. Okay, so that's what we have so far. You can start seeing how the more it dries, the more it's going to pop. So as it dries, it'll just get. Okay, I'm going to I'll put this down here, and we'll look at it in a couple minutes as it dries. Little Raffaele. Oh, you use iridescent gold. Okay. This one right here is going to be iridescent electric blue. It is probably the most popular of all of the luminescents. I don't know why that would be. It just is. I also add 3070 gold to my burnt umber. All right. And you like that effect, Gabriel? This one is iridescent topaz. Yeah, they would be great for painting the shine on beetles, the metallic on flies. I've seen it on hummingbirds. What else have I seen it on? Seashells. So there's a lot of things in nature that have that beautiful shine, shimmer. Oh, this is Aztec gold. You can watch it actually as I brush. I can flip the mica as I do that, and you can actually see it. Oh yeah, scales on fish. Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that you might want to look at if you're interested is the 238 dot card really gives you the ability to look at all the luminescent colors and allows you to play with them at a very economical way, if you will. It's not a huge amount of color, but it's enough color, as Cindy Allneck shows you in her video, to do a swatch to really kind of understand what it might do for you. And that way you're happy with your purchase. It's also a neat way to play or experiment. I like play. Okay, this is iridescent sunshine. And this is going to be antique copper. Antique copper. I think I may have already answered this, but if not, I'll say it again. Many of these, all these colors, all of these colors, they are all synthetic, which means they're perfect. You know, they're perfect in terms of size and weight and shape, and they're used for industry. Biggest industry using them would be the car industry. And that's because the car industry, as most things in industry, somewhat demand perfection. They don't want car recalls. So the pigment houses actually make these pigments. Okay. So I'm going to show you the ones we just put down a little while ago. As they here in front of me, they're quite really bright. My light wants to light them up, and my camera wants to kind of do the opposite. But let me show you. If this was outside, they'd just be really super bright. So we just did that one. That was the first one we did. This is our second one. Flip this around. This is our second. Here's our electric blue. Okay. Okay. There we go. See the little kids that live next door to me are going back to school. But I don't know if everyone's going back to school yet. Here in Washington, you were able to say whether you wanted to give up some of your bandwidth. And so my bandwidth is extremely fast, so I gave up bandwidth so it was available for school kids. Okay. This is going to be antique bronze. This one too. Oh, come on, come on. Come on, focus. There we go. Hello, Sandy. Okay, this is going to be iridescent gold stone. Iridescent gold stone. Hello, George. Two. Okay, this is antique gold. Antique gold. Antique gold. And this is iridescent garnet. Iridescent garnet. Iridescent garnet. Okay, the last one, again, was what you were talking about. This is iridescent gold. Iridescent gold. Okay. Yes, it's difficult to see on a printer, Tracy. I would agree. I would highly recommend, if you really want to see, the reason that we came up with the dot cards is after talking with artists everywhere, usually when people think about artists, it's, well, high visual, absolutely, but also tactile. There's things you can feel through a brush. And so the reason that we have the dot cards, it is the truest representation. It is truly the color. So when you wet that dot out, you can see how it behaves. You can feel it on your brush. You can choose to put it on any type of paper you want, whether it's smooth, whether it's rough, and see its behavior. And it's a way to test out 238 of them out of the 261, because we have that new Lauren McCracken black. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here's what they look like. You can see iridescent. You can definitely see over white, and they transition over onto the dark. And as you move it, now with the duochrome is going to be really the orientation of the viewer. The iridescent interference to some degree, but they're going to be, I think, less contingent on that. So there they are. All right. And as we have them down here and they're drying, as they continue to dry, they're just going to continue to really, really pop. So let's do those one more time. They're just going to continue to pop. So different than pyrroles and parallels, and phalos, which say, "Hey, I'm here." I mean, they're so vibrant. These say it in a different way. And somebody had mentioned about gene hands. Yes, gene hands will be another one to look at when it comes to, and whether it's Sandy or it's Claudia or Jean, I think they'd all be super open to answer questions that you might have from an artist's perspective, because they use these quite a bit. I just counted to make sure I've gone over these with you, because we're making really good time today. Just want to make sure I didn't skip any, and I didn't. Okay, the last three of the iridescent, what we're doing right now. Down a little bit like that. Oh, neat. I think that's great, Marie. This is iridescent ruby. Iridescent ruby. I don't know if this camera will pick this up. I don't think it'll pick it up. But let me see if I can get it up there. You can see that is just packed. It has just huge amounts of mica. Let me show you here. And it's just packed. It's like a blob of mica. And that's all right, because we just work it and have it come loose. So it's just going to release that mica in there. So there's all that mica. So this is iridescent ruby. Iridescent ruby. They look beautiful on this plate. This is going to be iridescent jade. So then next week we'll do the duochromes and the iridescent and the two pearlescent, and then we will have gone through 260 colors. The neat thing is, by the time we're at the end of the 260 colors, you'll know how to read a color chart. You'll understand if it says PW6, it's pigment white number 6, which is titanium white. PW6:1 means it's buff titanium. You'll know by looking at the characters, symbols, whether it is granulating, staining. You'll see all of that. So it's just over a cup of coffee now. You'll be able to know a great deal about the paint before you ever pick up a paintbrush. For those of you that went and tried the C-Lab graphing, what that will tell you is if you ever had a question, how does this color deal with that color, which one's more red, which one's more warm, you can use the cheat sheet that's included in Excel, or you can choose to graph it yourself and see which one's more yellow, which one's more blue, which one's more red, which one's more green. I was going to show you that when it came to the titanium white versus Chinese white. If you went ahead and did it yourself, you would have seen that Chinese white is slightly more blue, which means it's slightly more cool, and the titanium white is slightly more yellow, which means it's slightly more warm. But now a lot of those questions you have on any colors, if you choose to, you could answer those. I always like that. It gives you a lot of power over your passion, if you choose. Okay, this was iridescent ruby. This is topaz, jade, and this one was scarab red. All right. So that is all of the iridescents. And so next week we will go through and we will do the duochromes and we'll do the two pearlescent. I have one pearlescent with me right here. I'm going to show you one pearlescent, but I'll end up showing you both next week so you see them side by side. And there's pearlescent white and there's pearlescent shimmer, and they're both exactly the same pigment. The pigment size is different, however. And remember when we talked about the ultramarine blue and the French ultramarine, the only difference was the size of the pigment. They're both PB29, pigment blue number 29. And the larger particle size of the French ultramarine has it shift toward the red or the warm, And the smaller size of the ultramarine has it shift toward the green or the cool. And here, the particle size of the white is smaller than the shimmer. The shimmer being the larger particle size makes it shimmer more. And it's all about light and how the light hits it. Put a little more there. We'll try to show you that over here as well. The one thing that Facebook Live, which I think has been just a very good tool to communicate with large groups. I'm glad they have it. From my perspective, the one thing I'd like to see if they could ever add to it would be a little box somewhere where I could see that you can hear my voice. So that I never quite see. Okay. All right, so that was the last three of the iridescent, and then in the interim, what I did is I took one of the sheets that we had done before. Oh, thank you, Misha. And I just put, just here and there as we were doing, I took a brush and just went across so you can see what they look like on other colors. So the question is, can you see them on other colors that aren't black? Yeah, absolutely. And the more this dries, the more you would see it. And that just depends on how much you want to add. But you can see it over light colors and dark colors. The lighter the color, the less it's going to reflect back. So this is the one I just put down, which is the pearlescent. And just always how much you want to add to it, so you can really, kind of wood it down. But if you have questions, Claudia would be great to ask questions of. Sandy would be great to ask questions of in terms of the iridescence, and anybody else that would like to answer the questions on iridescence. Okay, so that's on other colors. This is our electric blue, and this is our pearlescent white. All right, so with that, I want to thank you all for being with me today. I always appreciate it. I know you have other things to do, and the world seems to be opening up, which is really fantastic for all of us. It'll be great as we go through the remainder of the year, and it just opens up more and more. I'm looking forward to that. Thank you for spending your time with me. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful. I wish you and yours health, and I will look forward to seeing you next week. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for joining me.